Hey guys, so let's jump straight into this. We're going to be recreating this UI that I created a couple of years ago now. And the objective is we're going to be doing like 30 minutes every day. And then I'll upload that to like a playlist that, if you wanted to create your own version of this or just copy it if you wanted to, you'll be able to sort of follow along. And we're going to be sort of tackling pretty much everything in here, and probably towards the end we'll look at sort of doing some hand painted icons and stuff like that as well. But as you can sort of see, like we've got quite a few reusable elements. We've got panels, and then we've got parchment and stuff like that. And if we capture the main elements at this point, the framing and things, then we're going to be able to reuse it quite a lot throughout the creation of the rest of the UI. I'm probably going to start with looking at the buttons, just because the buttons contain the panel designs, and also, let's start with buttons. It's usually sort of how I end up starting a project once I've captured the mood boards and all that type of stuff. So opening up Figma, I'm going to bring in that screenshot and just see that outside. Well, at this point, I've got a screenshot and a canvas, which is 1920 by 1080. If let's divide that a little bit, hit enter instead. There we are, and that would be, 360, I think. There we go. And obviously the grids are too massive, so we're just going to edit those. And I'm just going to take that back to an 8-pixel grid. That should allow us to get something relatively close. We can sort of scale up, which is probably what we'll end up doing when we're exporting the assets anyway. So this button's really tricky within Figma. It probably doesn't look it at this point, but there's going to be a few sort of weird workarounds that we'll have to sort of handle, really. So I'm just going to start with just dragging like the rough sort of button shape. In fact, if I want to be a little bit more accurate, let's just say, hey, it wasn't too far off. Let's just say I'll do it something like that. And we're in 0.5 pixel territory now, as you can see, but if we bring it back here, we can just sort of clean it up a little bit with the grid snap. And let's round up, round down. Yeah, something like that's fine. Okay, cool. And let me just reduce all of this so I can get a little bit more on the screen. And we want the rectangle. I'm going to do this. Let's do it 16. Now, unlike my other videos where I might have had a plan, or sometimes I even just go in and I don't really have a plan and I just sort of figure it out and then edit it quite heavily. I don't really have any sort of like plan in mind as such for how I want to handle this. So it's kind of like a little bit improv, really. So it's not going to be perfect, this type of format, but the idea is 30 minutes, try and get as much done as possible. And then tomorrow I'll come in and we'll carry on, and we'll see how far we get, really. So subtracted. So I've got the main shape here. Now, one thing to do really early at this point is just to take a look at your constraints. Now, the reason why this will be important is because when we come to create a component out of it, or, something like that, and it's going to respond sort of dynamically, we want it to sort of move along with the shape. So like this type of thing without too much stretching. But we just need to make sure that the things are in the correct corners for now, and then it will make a little bit more sense later on. And also, probably going to do bottom right, no, corner. This is just going to help probably later on. So bottom left corner and top left. There we go. And we've got the bases, which is good. So the first thing I'll probably do, I'm not sure if I'm going to do it in grayscale or not. I might do it in grayscale. So if I just want to get an idea of things, I'm just going to drag this over here and over to, there you go, I just pull it on color. And then that will give us a decent split of like, okay, so the colored version and the values for the grayscale, which is kind of what we're going to be, sort of shooting for with this. And that will allow us to, at this point, just sort of whack a gradient over it. And so the top color, there we go. So we can get our values pretty similar. I might want to change my canvas or frame values as well, just to match a little bit, just so we're balanced. Because when you're balancing against like a stark white background, it can blow your values out completely. Hey, that's fine. Let me just turn this off and I'll turn it back on whenever I want, whenever we need to. Right, so some things to think about here is, obviously, obviously the frames or stroke details and stuff are, easy to do with bevels in Photoshop and, styles and all that. But here it's not so easy. We need to sort of like basically build up these effects as layers, I think. So we'll be able to, do the sort of the stretching and stuff like that. So I'm thinking if we tackle this groove here, basically. So I'm probably going to do it through strokes, which kind of renders this a little bit pointless. If I was to do it with, like just this, which would be incredibly easy, then that makes it a bit harder when it comes to making it dynamically resizing. So, because you can't really 9-slice or anything in here, or set you guys like you could in Illustrator. And yeah, the plugins, they sort of compress the image or the component down to an image, and it's not really what you need, to be honest. So yeah, I'm thinking just off the cuff, we'll do a series of strokes and then we'll see how we get on with this. So I'm going to copy the gradient, so Control V, Control C, Control V, paste that over. And right, we've got our main outer part sorted. Now, so let's call that outer frame. The frame, I'm going to duplicate that. So that's Command D or Control D, I think, on the Windows computer. And now we've got our inner frame. So this would be inner frame 1, maybe. Now you'll start to sort of see why this is a good way to do it, but not, it's kind of like, it leads to something that's quite bloated, but it's sort of the only way. And I think it's kind of like probably the best way for sort of what we need, really. Or at least, if I was to sort of hand this product over to someone, having this amount of customization and variation is going to be, yeah, quite good. So that's the inner frame 1. I'm going to duplicate that again. So that'd be inner frame 2. Now this is going to be the black fill. So let's just bring that down. Not really going to see it at the moment because the background's so dark. But when we duplicate that again, now this would be the base frame, I imagine, based on what I can see. No, this is inner frame 3, actually. Yeah, so copying the colors here. I'm going to do something like that. And just double check I can see what's going on. This is something needs to be, that's fine. So yeah, live recording pretty much. tripping up. Yeah, that's fine. You turn that fully to black. Oh, there we go. I just went too low and then lost the stroke, which is sort of that bit there. Okay, and the inner one, so this needs to be 2 again. So incrementing it up to 2, or maybe, you could do it to 13 or something like that if you wanted it a bit more delicate. These are the things we can sort of dial just as and when we need to. And I'm going to bring 4 down, and this will be base. I'm going to put this back on. As you can sort of see, we've got the rough idea for the effect. I'll flip this for now, and in fact, let me make that a little bit darker. And I'm going to increase this. So this is the bit here where it pinches. So if I do that at 22, and I'm probably going to want to pinch this. So I'm selecting the stroke here, and I'm going to Control C and Control V again. And the light coming from roughly from the top, it's hitting this ridge here, which is kind of, sort of bending away. And then it's in shadow here, then it's going to hit that ridge and then in shadow there. So in order to create that illusion, we just want to flip this like that. And we've got the effect more or less, the same, which is looking good. Now, the next bit is probably going to be these sort of like bevel effects. Now, there's no real way of doing that type of thing in here. So we're just going to sort of draw it in. So I'm going to zoom right in here. I'll press P, and I'm just going to get as close to sort of points as I can, and then I can, sort of tweak afterwards. Remove the stroke and add a fill. That's relatively that's close enough, I'd say. So if we zoom out, we'll be able to balance the values a little bit there, probably just by sampling the reference in this case. And you can sort of see it gives us something similar. It's probably a bit too close in the contrast. So if we just ramp that up or down a little bit based on which way you think it should go, I'm probably going to adjust it a little bit, so it's a little bit lighter. And so that will be top left, bevel, alter. Command D again to duplicate this, or you could right click and there'll be a way in here to sort of duplicate it, I think, usually. Yeah. And then if we Shift H, that flips it horizontally. And then if we just pull that over, that's going to snap nicely. And then rename that. So that'd be top, right, bevel, outer. Select both of these and then Command D again. We're going to shift those up. And Shift V, so that's flipping it vertically. We're just going to drag that down to the bottom. And I'm thinking because we're further away from the light in this case, we will go a little bit darker, and that should sort of create a nice effect there. So that's bottom right, bottom left. There we go. So that's looking good. And then we'll need to do the same again for the inner bit. So as you can see, it sort of pinches here. And I'm doing this in 2 steps just so I can control how it falls over these elements. It should just make for a sort of a tidier UI, really. But like I've mentioned in the past, sometimes these types of things are better when they're a little bit, sort of rougher. Just do that. Something like that. So as you can sort of see, what I've got here is a little bit tighter than what I've got there. It's not the end of the world. All it means is I just need to adjust some of these strokes and then correct things, but I might do that in the next video just for time constraints. So that's top left, bevel, inner. And this will be top right, bevel, inner. And horizontal again, drag that over, should snap nicely into place. No. Okay. And then duplicate both of these, or not dev mode. Add these down. Yeah, so we just need to adjust things a little bit. And just remember, especially for this type of UI, you're simulating kind of like real materials and things that might have been forged by a hammer. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, stuff in the natural world is never really perfect. Even the sleekest, design, the sleekest Apple design, or, something like that on like a device isn't perfect. There'll be a few rough edges, and I think that adds to the character of it, really. Okay, so there's something in that. Yeah, I think maybe I went a bit too far in with the strokes, but generally we're roughly there, aren't we? So that's looking good, right? We just need to go through sort these anchors out. Right. When my top right. Well, that was bottom right, actually. And what's that one? That's bottom left. Top left. And these should be behaving as expected. Yeah, we did sort those. Okay, so that's those sorted, which is good. Now, if we take a look at the inner part of the button, so again, we're dealing with similar techniques, really. So strokes and bevels, and this should be sort of relatively straightforward, this one. So again, we'll do some strokes. And maybe let's just see how far in I went on this with the bevel settings. So it's more like 9, but let's round it up to 10. It's looking good. And we'll leave the fill. But yeah, we just want to whack a gradient over the top of that. And that's just going to give us that little 3D effect once we've sorted the bevels out. I'm going to sample that bit, and then we're going to cut in the bevel effects here. So we'll go up to, let's bring that down to 8, and then we'll go up to the edge, and then we'll do another stroke for that little ridge around here. So if I'm zooming right in, you can see my eyes are not what they used to be. Or there's just some weirdness with the alignment. It's not quite letting me to the pixel, is it really? And we can zoom in and sort of tidy all this up once we're sort of like fully settled. But there we go. And then just do it on this side, which in this case is just off the pixel. Again, doesn't really affect us too much. Okay. So that's looking good. Now we need to draw in the bevel. So let's get our pen tool. Just gonna trace over it. And there we go. Okay, so that's the top bit. Looking quite nice. Let's just put a little What's happened? What did I not do? Oh, did I? I ended up drawing it on the inner bevel, which just something to be mindful of actually. So just quickly again, I'll catch us up. To here. Yeah, there we are. It's drawing its own path again. There we go. And nice. Right, yeah, it's working now. Right, so let's sample the highlight value here. And we've got a shadow value that we need to sort out. So let's do that and then flip it again. So that's Shift V again. And bending away from the light, even though it's kind of like a sort of a glass effect, it might let a little, I'm guessing it's a glass effect. I think that's what I was sort of going for when I created it a few years ago. It will let some light through, but it depends on how sort of like, you know, opaque the glass is really. And that's looking good. And let's just sample this side here. There we go. So we've got our glass effect, well, beveled effect. Yep. So that's bevel. And that's top. And button, base. There we go. So make sure these are anchoring correctly. So I think that would want to be left and right, and that would want to be left and right as well. Hopefully we'll try when we turn it into a component, and we'll fix anything that sort of breaks if that isn't quite right at the moment. And then for the fill, I can sort of see there might be a little gradient, barely noticeable, but sometimes, you know, it's those details that really sort of, you know, do make the difference, you know, in terms of visual interest. In fact, do we need to slip that? It's the core slightly darker. And then something like that. Although I've sampled those and that's not really right. So continue to sample that 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And then this one, sample that. And yeah, it was a bit darker. Okay, cool. So obviously it gets lost here, which would be the case there. But when we do our inner stroke, then we'll see that lift. So I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to go 1, 2 steps for that. Now I'll just sample the values again. So we're just zooming in here. Just sort of making sure we're picking up a little bit of interest. So, it's looking good. I'm going to pop that one back over the top and remove that so we get that gradient. Then I think the next step is there's a little edge light, so in a glow or something. And that could just be done with another stroke, to be honest. Or we could try an effect. So using our first effect, so an inner shadow, and just going to ramp that up. Something like that. Reduce the blurriness a bit. It's a bit tighter. Something like that. Remove the Y offset. There, that's looking quite nice. And just to sort of really bring that to life, obviously it's about time we added a shadow. I mean, this is the beauty of RPG UIs is, you know, once you put a shadow in there, things start to look quite interesting. So I'm just using a default one here for now, which I think is fine. And then I just need to go back to here and just remind myself of what font I was using when I created this kit originally. It's Essentials. Let's see. There we go. So bitter. Using the bitter. Oh, of course it is. This kit was created so long ago that yeah, I've just completely forgotten everything about it. But hey, we've got it. That's good. And there's a little bit of letter spacing going on as well. So 10% is quite nice. And for now, I'm just gonna ramp this up. But as we work through this, some of the things that I'm going to be looking at is sort of creating like different sort of styles and variables and stuff like that. So we can actually start to tokenize the system, which is more of an advanced Figma thing. Then, that's something, we can sort of like take a look at definitely. And hopefully, yeah, pick up some tips along the way. And yeah. So let's just whack a little drop shadow on this. Be quite nice. You can barely see it at this point, but I sort of feel like the fill is a bit too black at the moment. So I'm just gonna, even though I did color match using the eyedropper, I'm just gonna kind of adjust it for what I can see this side, and hopefully that will improve things a little bit with some of the effects that we've got going on, because you can barely see them. So I'm gonna remove that. I'm just gonna ramp this up a little bit. There we go. Shift it 2 pixels. There, that's looking nice, isn't it? Pretty good. If you want to sort of soften things, you could always sort of round the edges just a touch. And obviously you would need to sort your bevels out as well, but that might, soften certain elements. But for now, we are dealing with sort of quite a square, sort of like robust UI style. But one thing I do know that I want to do is I'm going to just increase the shadow here as well, just to match my concept a little bit more. Something like that. It's looking cool. So like the shadow's a little bit darker here, so you might want to go the other way with it, like that. So you've got the light hitting and pinching and bouncing around there. You've got it doing the same here. But that's looking pretty cool. Now, the next step is to, obviously we've got our text, and then we've got the button elements here, which are not going to behave, I don't think, based on just doing that. So we might have to do that bevel slightly differently when we create a component out of it. We'll come back to it. And yeah, we'll duplicate this base, drag that up to here. So that should cover everything. And we're going to use this as the color multiplier, essentially. So I'm going to select the fill. I'm just going to sample that color. I'm just going to set it to like an overlay. And that gives us something relatively close. Again, if like you wanted to sort of roughen edges up and stuff like that, that's all going to be possible a little bit later on when we start sort of chipping away at this. So I'm going to duplicate this again. So this will be color overlay, overlay, and we don't need the stroke for that. We actually just again want all the shadow. We just want to add the fill, and then we're going to sample some of that nice orangey red that's going on. And this one we might need to tweak a little bit, just to sort of get what we want. Nice, so we've got that. And then if we wanted to create the other states, we could probably do like the drop shadow after all, so bring it back and turn that into a glow effect like this. Increase the spread, adjust it to maybe a bit more orange. It's kind of like orange, but it's almost like a sort of white. It's whiter. So if the blur's good, the spread already giving the effect, and then something like that. And then we can take it one step further a little bit later on if we wanted to. But for now, like, this is like relatively close to sort of what I was at least hoping for, to cover in this sort of like 30-minute daily thing that I'm sort of starting up. Just to sort of finish off the main effect, let's just whack in another shadow, and we'll just ramp up some of the fall off there, create like a little bit more contrast with the background, something like that. Okay, cool. So that's looking pretty close. How are we for time actually? Where's the clock? Oh my god, I didn't even press start. But here we are. Oh, just over 32 minutes actually. I've just checked on my OBS recording. But yeah, so that's day one. Hopefully you sort of like this format where we, go through and we sort of break down like a more sort of like completed sort of like UI, that's, got all of the elements in there. And by sort of doing it this way, it's going to give us an idea of like how to look at concepts that you might receive from someone that you're in charge of having to implement, so you get a concept from someone, it could be a PSD like this, or it could be a Figma file, and you're going to need to, figure out how to break it down and sort of like slice it all up or whatever it may be, or even recreate it within Figma. But yeah, so hopefully that sounds interesting. I'm going to put all this as part of like its own little playlist, just so people can go through, and I kind of see this as like a mini series, but also testing the water in terms of whether you guys actually like it or not. The biggest problem I have at the moment is time and like setting up, cameras and doing it all like really fancy and stuff like that. Like some of the really, impressive edits that you get for, Figma content. I just don't really have a ton of time for it with, sort of my busy work schedule and everything like that. But I do want to get content out for you guys. So if you're interested in us like working through these designs like this, then yeah, I think we're going to learn a lot along the way. It's going to be fun. And this is just kind of like, like the Cozy UI Club that, we set up on Discord. It's just a sort of a chill place to hang out, and hopefully a bit interesting and useful along the way. And as we work through this, hopefully we'll get a little bit more relaxed and we'll start to refine it and start to build something really awesome out. But yeah, that's it for now. So obviously if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share with your friends. Also join us on the Cozy UI Club on Discord. And I'm going to be making these files as I'm building them available over on my Gumroad, I think it is. So if you want to download it, you'll be able to download it from there. And yeah, that's all for now. Cheers, guys. And I'll see you tomorrow for episode 2.